Well, towards the end of high school, I started to get really interested in public policy and kind of how things worked, and the insider look at how things were actually put together. And when I got to college, I got very involved in student government there. Total student government nerd. Like my first week, like started going to the meetings, and from that point, I started studying political science and law, and just trying to figure out how the pieces fit together, and how they could be improved. Noticed a lot of areas where things seemed to be lacking, where the government wasn't really representing what people wanted. So when I got back from college in 2009 and I moved back here to South Orange, I started going to all the town meetings, joined a couple committees, and just wanted to try and find ways that I could use some of my technology background, some of my public safety background, and start to get involved. And just kind of snowballed, and at a certain point I found myself running for mayor. Yeah, so my age definitely came up not only after getting elected, but also on the campaign trail. Actually some of the people, when I knocked on their door and I was running for office and I said, hi, I'm Alex, I'm running for village president, I was wondering if I could talk to you for a few minutes today, a few people actually laughed. I was 23 at the time, and to me I saw that, as a challenge, but kind of as an opportunity. I said, well, you know what, give me a couple minutes, let me explain to you, what I want to do here. And let me try and reshape the way that you think about what a mayor looks like, or what leadership is, and why can't it be a young person. And a lot of those people actually who were most critical or hesitant ended up kind of turning into the biggest supporters. And since that point, there's definitely there's always criticism. People basically as a young person, if you make a mistake, which everybody does, right, is that at that point when you're young and you do make that mistake, it's kind of attributed to your age. Right? It's not a mistake that you make because people make mistakes, it's a mistake you made because you're young. And so everything you do is kind of always framed in that way. You're doing this because you're young. And so that's kind of a barrier to get over, is to get people to really see you not just as a young person, but just as the person in this position. The criticism is still there. I've gotten older, so I guess that helps a little bit. But I think what I started to realize was that each of those points, same on the campaign trail, each of those points where someone was reluctant or hesitant or critical of a program I was doing or policy I was talking about, or really anything, that I just try and take those as opportunities to convince somebody, to show them that not only can I do this, but young people can do this. And I'd like to think that all of us young elected officials that are doing these things, school boards, councils, mayors, all over the place, and in private sector and non-elected office too, people start to see that and they say, well, you know what, this is interesting. I'm starting to see these young people, and they're actually able to take on these challenges. And I think we see that more in the private sector, with companies like Facebook and a lot of other tech startups, where the CEOs or founders are really, really young, and they're in charge of hundreds of millions of dollars in these incredibly popular websites or other platforms. But that takes the government is always a little bit behind, so there's always playing catch up. And so not only are those kind of opportunities to convince someone that you can do the job, but if you can change somebody's mind about what leadership looks like, what young people are capable of, I think that's progress. When I ran, the main things that I talked about, and really any in any town, especially in New Jersey, the biggest issues are going to be people's property taxes. It's going to be public safety. It's going to be improving your downtown. And on each of those fronts, we've been making a lot of progress. We've been seeing crime decrease each year in South Orange overall. This year is hopefully going to be the third year where we have a budget increase that's about 1.5%. And those are actually the three lowest increases in the past 15 years. So our budget has started to even out a little bit. There's still a small increase each year, but it's stabilized. The downtown, we've been bringing more businesses in, having more events downtown, cleaning it up, and for me personally, I want to do all of those things, in kind of this framework of, well, let's make it as accessible and transparent as possible. Let's get people involved in the process. I'm going to try and be available on social media as much as possible. And so we've been doing that, and we've got accolades from the ACLU, the New Jersey Foundation for Open Government, and a whole bunch of other organizations about how we're trying to make what we do more accessible to people, make our budget more understandable, so that it's not just this $32 million spreadsheet that's online, but that it's actually a document that people can understand, and it's actually interactive, which is a tool that we're launching this year. It's going to allow people to visualize our budget information. So those are kind of the biggest points that I talked about and that we've been working on, and we're making a lot of progress on all those fronts. But there's always a lot more we can do. We're always working on sustainability initiatives, relationship with Seton Hall University, economic development, but all those kind of come in the framework is making sure this is an affordable place for people to live. The question was about Hurricane Sandy. It's funny. I mean, this is something that I talk about, almost on a daily basis still. In fact, right now, working with a couple U.S. Senate offices, our state legislature, the county, other mayors, and basically trying to follow up on the response to the utility companies, making sure that we can find ways for them to manage the information of the outages better, so that next time there's a storm that's as big as Sandy and we have widespread power outages, that there's actually better systems in place, better information technology systems in place that allow them to be more efficient about how they respond. South Orange did not face anywhere near the kind of destruction that you saw down at the shore or the Rockaways or anything like that. But our experience mirrored a lot of towns where we basically almost the entire town was without power, and the last house got back a couple weeks later. And we were, every day trying to get more information about what was going on, about when the power was going to come back on. We had critical facilities, schools, polling locations, our public works facility without power, and we were really trying to get utility companies to step up and tell us, when was the power going to come back online? What can we do to help? And since that, a lot of other mayors, especially downshore in South Jersey, a lot of those mayors have coalesced around each other to get support. And now you see that Hurricane Sandy and the shore is a national talking point. People are looking at the shore as a place that needs to be rebuilt, and whereas most people were looking at the shore as, oh well, it's the show, TV show, the Jersey Shore, and that's all that it is. And it's really not. It's a lot of place where a lot of middle class families live. And a lot more people understand that now nationally than they used to, and they're getting a lot more attention. So at the local level, there's a lot of grassroots movement. Every day I spent a couple hours in meetings yesterday about these issues, trying to follow up with the utility companies, create a working group of how we can use technology to be better prepared. And the fact that these storms are so large that the number of out-of-state utility workers that come in to do mutual aid to help repair the lines outnumbered the in-state utility workers like 5 to 1 this storm. But the information systems they use to manage those outages are not compatible between state to state. So over the past 10 or 20 years, fire departments, police departments, emergency management offices, they've all basically moved towards what everybody calls interoperability. Right? You have to get your radio systems on the same channels, you have to use the same language, so that basically if one fire department responds to another town, they can integrate 100% right away, and there's not going to be a barrier. The utility companies haven't gotten there yet. Everything is siloed. So right now, if these storms continue, which everyone is saying, we expect these large storms to continue the way they have been, then we have to find a way for the utility companies to integrate better too, so that when something like this happens, out-of-state workers from Kentucky, Mississippi, Florida can come into New Jersey and right away plug their systems right into ours and get to work on repairing things. So there's a lot to do still. There's a lot of rebuilding to do down at the shore. There's a lot of advocacy we need to do at the local level to the county, to the state, and to the federal government to make sure that we make some progress so next time there is a storm, we don't see the same thing that happened this time. So in high school, for the first couple years of high school, I was pretty set on, probably actually going to like a D1 school to play tennis. I played a lot of tennis when I was younger, and at a certain point, I had a couple different experiences in my life that contributed to this, and also had the opportunity to meet Assemblyman John McKeon, who's the Assemblyman for this district, and Newark Mayor Cory Booker. And that was about junior year of high school. And I met both those people, and up until that point, I had always assumed that politics was kind of a shell game. Nobody was interested in it. Nobody was involved in it. For the public interest. Most of the people who did it, weren't honest people. I was very cynical, at a pretty young age about it. But I met these two people, each in kind of a unique way, and both of them are people who are incredibly genuine and honest and passionate about helping their communities. And I realized, well, wait a second, if they can do this, they can be honest, they can be good people, and they want to make change, maybe I could do this one day too. So I started to think more about what I could contribute in that way. I started to think more about government not as a place where ideas go to die, but as a place where progress can happen and where you can leverage the government to make people's lives better. And so I started studying that more in high school, getting more involved, and then, like I said, as soon as I went to college, literally my first week of college, I went to a student government meeting and said, how can I get involved? And it really snowballed from that point. Once you start getting involved like that and you start to see, if you really spend the time and you really, put your head down and work through some of these issues, you can actually make a difference in people's lives. And when you hear that from somebody, whose life you've impacted in some way, even if it's on a small level, even if it's in college and it's a student who has a student group, and you're able to help them do what they want to do, like, I just did that for somebody. I was able to put the systems in place and the processes to make that person able to do what they want to do and improve their lives. And so I just wanted to keep taking that up and up. So to answer your question, at a certain point, I definitely, didn't really see myself getting involved in these kind of things, but, that started to change as I realized that getting involved in government and making change through that was actually possible. So when I first talked to my parents about doing this, they were excited. They were excited because they knew that this was something that I cared a lot about, and they saw me kind of grow into or evolve into a person, throughout college that was interested in being involved in some of these things. The position here in South Orange is actually completely unpaid. So my mother especially was a little worried about, well, what am I going to do to make money and pay the bills and things like that. Definitely, kind of concerned for their son in that way. But they were supportive. I spent months and months deliberating over whether I should run or not, and whether I should run for a town council seat or the mayor's seat. I had conversations with parents and family and friends and even old professors from school about what I should do. And when I finally decided to kind of pull the trigger and move forward, they couldn't have been more supportive. They knocked on doors for me. They canvassed the whole neighborhoods. They made phone calls. They had a coffee at their house. My family in general definitely provided a lot of support. My family and friends, I had friends from college who came out here and stayed with me for a week to help me knock on doors. And that was one of those things that I learned, it just reinforced the importance of having people around you that can go to bat for you and support you, and people that aren't going to say, oh yeah, everything you do is great, but they're going to tell you when you're doing something wrong. They're going to be people you can bounce ideas off of, and they're going to be people who you can kind of have that debate with, but and they know that at the end of the day, you're trying to get to a goal of getting something done, so it's all done in the right context, and that support was incredibly helpful. What's next? That's a good question. It's hard to think about that a little bit. A lot of people ask me, what I want to run for next, and my answer generally is I don't know, which is true. I don't know. It's hard to think about those things when there's so much to do right now. We're still trying to follow up on Hurricane Sandy. We've still got so many things to do in between. The position of village president, grad school, my business, nonprofit, and being an EMT at the rescue squad here as a volunteer. It's a lot going on, right now. So I'm kind of like steeped in, everything South Orange right now, like 24/7. I'm going to continue, I think, to be in government probably for the rest of my life. This is what I want to do. Elected or not, I'm not really sure. My term isn't up for another 2.5 years, so I've got a pretty good amount of time to, keep working on a lot of projects in South Orange before I have to make any decisions. But I do expect that my life will be, revolved around, public service, public policy, and government, either through elected or appointed office. So this is a great question. There's a lot to say, and I'll try and condense it down. Actually, on one front, myself and a couple other young elected officials have recently started a nonprofit called Rethink Leadership. And the goal of the nonprofit, it's totally nonpartisan, and the goal of it is to try and inspire and encourage young people to think about elected office as a way to make change in their community. To think about government as a tool for social change or political change or whatever they want to see. And you know, right now there's so much partisan gridlock in Congress, even in state legislatures. You know, people have indebtedness to large, you know, special interests and campaign donors, the way that, you know, makes them, you know, kind of unsure about how they're supposed to act in office. I mean, it's a tough field to navigate. But I think something is changing, which is that, you know, you're able to raise more money online in smaller donations. You're able to reach people in a more inexpensive way, so you don't need as much money as you used to run for office. You can get your message out to someone. You know, if you have a YouTube channel and a Facebook page, you know, you can use that to run for mayor in a town. You could use that to run for school board or town council. And then obviously every position you get up, it gets harder and harder, and you need more money, you need more connections. But you know, for so long, you had to be part of the political establishment to run for office, and that's changing. And that's changing in a really, really interesting way. So, you know, my advice to young people is do it. If you're thinking about doing it, do it. You know, stop thinking about it and just make it happen, because it's possible. You know, you can do it. You know, it's not easy. It is easier than it used to be. Running for office is very challenging. It's definitely stressful. You got to have those people around you that can support you. You've got to have a team of people that are ready to be there for you and help you do this. And what I really want to do with this nonprofit is create those networks for people, so that if you don't have that network, if you're not connected into a political network or a political establishment, you can still run for office and use this wider network of nonpartisan, you know, young elected officials to help support you. Even if it's just being stressed out on the campaign trail and needing to pick up the phone and call somebody and say, oh man, I'm so stressed out, you know, I'm knocking on all these doors, I'm facing this criticism, you know, how do you handle this? And being able to talk to somebody about that who's done it already is really important, and there's no way I could have done it without having talked to people who already did it. So building on those networks is important, and just, you know, looking at it and saying, so we've got this system, right, the system that, you know, once every 4 years, only about half the country even votes for president. It takes an hour out of their time to go to the polling station and vote for president. And that level of apathy, I mean, it's incredible. And so you look at the number of people who vote in a presidential election and the number of people who vote in a state election or a municipal election. And then you get to the point of people who actually would run. I mean, you're making a multi-year commitment to spend a lot of time on this. And I think what people don't quite understand is the influence and the power that you can have even at a local level. You know, local governments are in charge of schools, roads, police, fire, parks. You know, disaster response happens at a local level. Your taxes, your downtown shopping areas, you know, events and concerts, all the public transportation. I mean, there's so many things that local governments are involved in. And if someone is interested in innovating in that, you know, using technology to make something better, bringing the government out to the people, having, you know, more local town meetings so the senior citizens that live in the community feel more connected to the government that don't use technology. You can do all those things. Those things are possible, and not only are they possible, but people want to see that change. So I think as people realize that young people have those ideas, they're going to start to think of us as even better options. So, you know, my advice is, you know, find that support network, reach out to people, just do a search on Twitter and find other young elected officials and reach out to them and ask them for advice. I mean, I've never met a young elected official who doesn't want to do that, who doesn't want to help others. And when you get down to the point of whether you're going to make the decision or not to get involved and to run, I would say definitely do it. It's an incredible experience. It's a humbling experience to go literally knock on people's doors. In an age of technology where sending an email or making a phone call seems like you're interrupting someone, you're going to their house and knocking on their door and asking for them to trust you to make decisions on behalf of them. It's incredibly humbling to do that over and over and over again and have to face all the questions and all the criticism. So it's a great experience. You know, a lot of people don't win their first time. That doesn't matter. You know, just do it and just see what happens.